Hello everybody and welcome back to another video from the Theory of Racelessness. Before the clip, we have some very exciting news. Dr. Sheena Mason, Dr. Carlos HOYT, and Greg Thomas present Resolving the Racism Dilemma, a full-day conference coming up this September 24th, 2022. Register using the link in the description box down below to experience these leading voices as they explore and discuss how to correct the misguided notions of race. Now, enjoy the video.
That should be racelessness should be not perceived as a characteristic of whiteness, but as a characteristic of all of us, because that's how we get to the liberation we say we want.
In your mind, is a difference between racelessness and colorblindness?
Yeah, so colorblindness speaks to the belief that there's something to be seen, right? I can see your skin color, your hair texture, all these things. I can see your phenotype, and I can translate that into race, but I cannot let your race dictate how I treat you. It's an admirable goal. I don't think there's anything wrong in particular with that. I watched one of your talks on a case for colorblindness, and I was with you. I was like, this, yes, this makes sense. I personally don't have a problem with people aspiring to not let their biases impinge or infringe onto how they interact with other people. But theory of racelessness is radically different, because I'm saying what you're translating into race, you're making a conceptual error. It's these other things. If this is Scooby-Doo and we're chasing after the villain and we catch the villain and we demask the villain's going to pop into like 4 different characters. One is going to be class, one is going to be ethnicity, one is culture, and one is racism itself. And it's because we've conflated all of these things that we continue to stay in the quagmire of racism, because racism is being packaged with these other things that actually have meaningful, value to our society. So we should stop translating skin color into race, for example. We should stop translating class into race. And we should do that so that, number one, we can have more clarity in terms of who we are as Americans and who we are as individuals and all the things. But also we should do that because so long as we translate something into race, we continue to package with that race concept the things that were originally packaged with it to subjugate groups of people, such as individuality and mobility and freedom from racism and liberation and all of those things. Which means that those things are then inaccessible to the majority, not all, because folks like yourself and I, we get outside of it, but to the majority of citizens, they stay within the confines and they see certain characteristics and happenings, with cries like math is racist, all of that. They see certain things only for white people, or they see it only for Black people, or only for Asian people. So colorblindness doesn't help us stop doing that. Racelessness on a fundamental level does.
Interesting. Yeah, so if I understand it, it's the idea that colorblindness actually doesn't get rid of the idea of race. It just says that you should not use race as a reason to treat people differently.
Yeah, and if you know the literature on like unconscious bias trainings and stuff, we know that that's ineffective. It doesn't have any long-term effect because you're not transforming how people think and how they see themselves. You're just essentially affirming their biases in a lot of ways and helping them overcome the biases as best as any human can. And I see theory of racelessness as an intervention into that space to radically change and expand how people see themselves and how they see other people, which will ultimately lead to the inevitable undoing of the ism that race carries with it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I am more disposed towards the colorblind idea, I guess, than the raceless idea. in part, yeah, I guess I'd have to think about it more, but in part because, maybe you meet people a little bit where they are to some degree. Like race is, I do think race is a social construct. Like most people have these ideas of blackness and whiteness, and they change over the centuries. We reinvent them. They're morphing because of the culture. We invent them into the laws. We come up with these new words, and people do have these concepts in their head. So they are they do matter to that extent, even if they're not catching on to any natural categories in the world. So I guess the question is, does it make more sense to persuade people that there's nothing that, so does it make more sense to persuade people that race is sort of clouding out what we're really talking about, which is skin color, class, I don't know what the other things you were saying.
Culture, ethnicity.
Culture, which are presumably more real than race, on this view? Or do we argue that, okay, race is an idea out there, but it shouldn't be enshrined into any of our laws, into sort of our interpersonal life in a way? This is a very interesting question. I'm not really sure that I've settled what I think about it. But the way I see it, even in a world where there were really strict genetic and even like cultural differences between people, like as I said, if some like alien overlord made it so that there was 50,000 years or 10,000 years of no procreation between geographically isolated people, there were just like somehow 5 tribes in the world, and they like intermarried perfectly randomly so that their genes were all like randomly distributed and completely separate from the other tribes. Still, a norm of equal treatment would make sense, and it would still matter that the most important categorization was human first. Yet in that world, it might make some concept of race might actually be a natural category in that hypothetical world. So I guess my point is, I wouldn't want to hinge all of our ethics and politics on what is true of natural categories.
We hope you enjoyed that highlight. To watch the full version, use the link in the description box down below. Before we go, here's another reminder for Resolving the Racism Dilemma with Dr. Sheena Mason, Dr. Carlos HOYT, and Greg Thomas. We highly encourage you check out the great things being offered at this conference, September 24th. All of the conference information is linked down below. We hope to see you there.